Welcome to this Whole Life Action Hour. I am so glad you are here with us. In a few moments, we'll be on with Dr. Kim Williams with a focus on cardiovascular health. Every year, cardiovascular disease takes the lives of millions of people around the world, often without warning. But most heart attacks and other cardiovascular events are completely preventable, and simple changes to your diet and lifestyle can help you and your loved ones avoid becoming another statistic. A healthy heart doesn't just keep you alive, it keeps you alive. It provides nourishment to every cell in your body. And right now is the time to take action because cardiovascular disease often starts earlier than you might think. So in this conversation, you're going to learn what the research tells us about the foods that you can eat and avoid so you can help prevent and even reverse cardiovascular disease. We're also going to look at the stunning connection between cardiovascular disease and COVID-19 mortality and why certain ethnic groups are most at risk in these times. I want to be very clear here that nothing you will hear today is medical advice. This is coaching. We're sharing our best insights. But of course, you should always consult with a qualified healthcare professional regarding your specific healthcare needs and medical issues. That said, you're going to learn a lot today. Now, this event is a project of Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. This week, we've hosted action hours with Dr. David Katz on Saturday, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz on Monday, and today with Dr. Kim Williams. Whole Life Club paid members get permanent access to our entire library of action hours, including transcripts and the chance to submit questions in advance. Today, you're going to hear from some of the questions submitted by our Whole Life Club members. They also get weekly recipes and videos and monthly live Zoom events and a community of support and a lot more. So stay on to the end if you want to hear about a special opportunity to join in Whole Life Club that expires tomorrow. But now we want to talk about cardiovascular health and about you. So I want to introduce our guest, who is such a luminary in this field. We're so grateful to have this time with him. He's Dr. Kim Williams, Chief of the Division of Cardiology at Rush University. Dr. Williams specializes in cardiology, prevention, and cardiac imaging. He has served on numerous national committees and boards, including serving as the president of the American College of Cardiology, president of the American Society of Nuclear Cardiology, and chairman of the board of directors of the Association of Black Cardiologists. He's also the founder of the Urban Cardiology Initiative in Detroit, Michigan, to reduce ethnic heart care disparities. And he continues community-based efforts in Chicago at Rush. Dr. Williams is a native of Chicago's South Side, and he has over 30 years of experience as an educator, researcher, and physician. Welcome, Dr. Williams.
Thank you so much for having me, Ocean. It's great to see you again.
Oh, it's great to see you again, too. People talk about cardiovascular health a lot, and it's not exactly news that we can prevent many cases of it. Dr. Ornish's work has proven that, and we've known about that for a long time. But we're still losing, what is it? It's the leading cause of death on the planet. Like 14 million people a year are dying from cardiovascular disease. So why do you think there's this disconnect? We know so much, but we're still dying in droves.
Well, to be honest, there's a lot of competing interests. And so a lot of it has to do with food. Food is produced in many ways in many countries, and many of the things that are marketed and are consumed by the population that people revere, things that they learn from their parents and their grandparents on what to eat. We now have the science to try and guide them. And of course, we try to guide, we meaning American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, try to guide people with guidelines, okay? And we have prevention guidelines, most recently published a couple of years ago. And the nutrition section really focuses on 5 things. Please reduce your sodium content, your saturated fat, your cholesterol, your refined grains, and sugar-sweetened beverages. If we did that, if we did those things, our obesity epidemic, the incidence of hypertension, the high cholesterol, and 3 major issues that are keeping us in the cardiovascular disease pandemic and contribute to the COVID-19 pandemic mortality. Anybody can get COVID. but not everybody dies.
Yeah.
And the risk factors for dying are very, very clear. They're the same risks that people have for cardiovascular disease. Not enough exercise, not enough good nutrition, so that they're overweight or obese is the number one. But high cholesterol. Turns out that the COVID virus uses the cholesterol molecule to get into your cells. Wow, wouldn't it be nice if your cholesterol was low, less penetration into the cells? The high blood pressure does blood vessel damage. Well, guess what? The damaged blood vessels are worsened by COVID. And so we have this, this cacophony of situations that would have been preventable if your message, the first time I talked to you, must have been 5 years ago. If your message had gotten out and gotten to everyone back then, we'd be, we wouldn't be laughing it off because it's still a serious illness, but the amount of mortality that we have would not be the same.
Yeah. I've heard it said when COVID first hit, we thought the major risk factor was going to be asthma and lung issues. And of course, that is a risk factor. But it turns out, I think that cardiovascular disease is even more dangerous. And in some ways, we might want to think of it as fundamentally, it's obviously a systemic illness, but in many ways, it's a cardiovascular illness, isn't it?
Right. And so the interesting part is that people will die primarily on a ventilator with respiratory failure. You get this goop that's secreted into your lungs in response to this virus that is very damaging, and it's hard to get. And this is why proning people improves the outcome, because you can drain some of this stuff and you can change your ventilation to perfusion ratios a bit, and that really has been helpful. And so we now know how to stop people from dying as much as we can. We don't have that first few months in like New York and wonderful institutions having a mortality rate of 80% if you were on a ventilator. We don't have that anymore, but it's still a high risk. And the big difference of brown and black people having more mortality, more exposure, sure. If you have a less socioeconomically developed educational system, and so people end up with lower paying jobs that they have to go to in order to survive. That means increased exposure, sure. But that doesn't mean that they have to die. And it turns out that the risk factors that the obesity, I talked about cholesterol, for example, but the obesity issue is a major one. That is, it impairs your immune system. And guess where this virus really wants to reproduce itself? Because the virus actually is fat. It has a lipid bilayer. Okay. And so it really wants more fat in order to reproduce itself. And it loves to be inside so-called fat cells, or adipocytes is the technical term for it. And even the layperson has heard this term of cytokine storm. That cytokine storm is much worse if your fat cells are infected, because you get adipokines and they contributing to the cytokine storm, and the viral load is higher because it's so much easier to reproduce. So this virus is really picking on the people who have cardiovascular risk. Now, the funniest part about it is I thought for sure that if you take out all the vulnerable people, that COVID would be the #1 killer in 2020. Turns out it wasn't. It was still cardiovascular disease, even though we took out so many candidates but with the mortality, heart disease is still #1.
And a lot of the people who died of COVID were in fact also suffering from some form of heart disease as well.
Exactly. And respiratory disease, chronic kidney disease is a major one, but the ones that we could do something about really quickly, those were all. And this message came out, I saw a piece, I made a slide out of it from PCRM a month into the pandemic saying, fix your diet, fix your outcome. Yeah. And I just, and then a year later, you hear this message, this analysis by the National Institute of Health saying that out of the recommended 3 to 5 vegetables that people should be eating every day in the United States, that 90% of Americans don't do that. It's really, really tough out there getting the message out so people can protect themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to tease out for a second the distinction or the nuances between heart disease and cardiovascular disease. Because some people kind of use them inseparably, but the way I think of it, cardiovascular disease is somewhat of a broader lens on some of the same dynamics. How do you see the words being different? What is cardiovascular disease to you, and how does heart disease interact with it?
So I think the hand motions you did were perfect. Okay. Cardiovascular disease, vascular means blood vessel.
Yeah.
And people who have cardiovascular disease, let's just take one example, and that is atherosclerotic, meaning that you're putting plaque in your arteries. You eat an animal, you take the cholesterol out of the animal, it's more than your body needs, and therefore you store it somewhere, and unfortunately in an artery is a bad place for it to go. So you can get a heart attack, which everybody knows. You could get a stroke, okay? And people don't realize that the two are related other than hypertension, but they are. You can get peripheral artery disease that can end up in an amputation, and people don't necessarily know that that's not just diabetics. It happens with diabetics and smokers. It happens to people because of the plaque. And yes, diabetes and smoking accelerates that process and leads to amputations, but it's still basically the same disease. When you eat that animal product or that saturated fat, you can't tell it where to go. Okay. And so you end up erectile dysfunction, heart failure from blocked vessels, stroke, peripheral artery disease, chronic kidney disease is sometimes based on plaque in the arteries. And so any artery is actually susceptible. And so you can call this, kidney disease. You can say, oh, the person's got nephropathy or renal disease. And vasculopathy, your legs are going bad and you're needing amputations or stents or bypass. Well, it's still cardiovascular disease. So if it's the heart or the blood vessels that lead from the heart, then it's cardiovascular.
Yes, thanks for that perspective. And I would say that one of the things I'm interested in is, of course, preventing illness, but also optimizing health. Most people don't just want to live longer, they also want to live better. They want to live more vibrant and more alive. And the truth is that blood flow to your whole body is critical to vitality and wellness and joy and having a bounce in your step and moving through life with vibrancy and pleasure. And so, of course, the calcification of the arteries and the compression of blood flow over time doesn't just create a risk factor. It also creates a dampening of joy, doesn't it?
Well, certainly. And there's actually interesting that you mentioned that there's an increasing amount of literature talking about, particularly in diabetics, improvement in mood when people do plant-based nutrition. And some people will speculate is because, deep inside of you, you are pre-programmed to eat vegetables. I love these theories. Okay. that when you're taking the life of a sentient being that felt pain when it was being murdered and all this stuff, there may be some truth to that. There also could be just the simple fact that when people are not doing a healthy diet, they end up with more disease. And that is a downer. And seeing your hemoglobin A1C get better and seeing your cholesterol get better sort of lifts you up. And so when people lose weight and become more active, of course, it becomes self-fulfilling. That is, the more you do, the more you're able to do. So the more you do. Yes. And so you're absolutely right. Yes, if you look at the Adventist health studies saying that a man who goes vegetarian is going to live 9.6 years longer than one who isn't. Well, it's not just living longer, it's living, like you said, living better. I say more life in your life. It's not just more life during your life, it's more life in your life. And being able to, it turns out that same data set said you're likely to be 30 pounds lighter, which means you're going up and down mountains when everybody else is sitting in a chair.
Yes. I want to ask you for a moment about your work to bridge ethnic disparities around cardiovascular outcome and health outcome. We see statistically, the poorer people are, but also the darker their skin color, the more likely they are to suffer and die from chronic disease. And the more likely they are to have restricted access to healthy food, healthy environment, healthy air, and all of the other factors that can influence health outcome. And with COVID, this came screaming at us, with African Americans having roughly 3 times the mortality rate as white people in the United States in 2020. What do you think we can do for those of us who are heartbroken by the injustice of it and the fact that often people who can least afford high medical costs are suffering from them the most? Um, what can we do as a society and as individuals to help bridge that gap so that we can have healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for everyone?
So really good question, and you unpacked it actually so well. So I'm going to just hit a highlights of a few of the things that you actually said, okay? Because you
Yeah.
did that so well. Let's talk about the cost. And why do I start talking about the cost is because everyone's talking about structural or systemic racism and its effects on society. And what they're not realizing is EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Labor and Treatment Act of 1986, okay? Which means that if you're a accredited hospital and somebody comes to you with a stroke and they have no resources, you have to take care of them. Now, it takes a couple months when you have, heart failure or kidney failure to end up on Medicare, but the totally disabled people end up on Medicare. And even though our cardiovascular disease mortality in African Americans is 21% higher than other ethnicities, not everybody dies. And so when they do, it's a tragedy for the family. And when they don't, it's a difficulty for us all. Because take a piece of society, give them weaker, less funded schools, give them lower levels of education, harder to make a transition from, South side of Chicago public school to a major university. I lived that, I got through it, okay. But it wasn't the easiest transition. And in my class at University of Chicago, incoming class 1971, I can tell you that they made a specific effort to go after Chicago public schools. Two of us actually got through, they were all pre-med in my group, and only two of us actually made it. And the rest of the people ended up doing something else. Now, so if you take those statistics and you systematically undereducate people, lower levels of economics, who ends up paying for the healthcare? Our system does. And with our Medicare system, the moment you're disabled, people think it's 65 and over. It's 65 and over plus all the disabled people. And so this is a problem. I think African American health, Hispanic health is a problem for all of us. Now, let me distinguish those two for a moment, because not everybody has heard of the Hispanic paradox.
Yeah.
But it's real. That is, there's more likely with the food and the genetics to end up with diabetes, central obesity, some hypertension, some coronary disease, and then live longer than whites. So if you are concerned about the Hispanic community, the prevalence of disease and the persistence of disease is so high that it's a tragedy. It's taking the younger people and taking their parents and grandparents to doctors, decreasing their own productivity for their own family going forward, okay? And it persists because they don't die as fast. African Americans, it's more tragic. That is, the death rate is high. Yes. So neither of those, having more disease and a short life, more disease or a long life, none of those are the things that we want. And if we could trace it back to its roots, it would be nutrition. And so, you set that up very well. We still have some areas that have food deserts where you have a mom and pop or a small grocery store, family owned, great, but not having the capacity to deliver high quality produce and stocking in order to stay in business. They have to and this is a cycle that perpetuates itself. You sell the things that are going to sell. Okay. Yeah. And those perpetuate the next generation. That's what's available. And that's what people start liking. And so if you're doing, pizza and snack foods all the time and chips, we could actually talk about how bad these are and write guidelines, and we have. But unless we have educational tools and some help from, I'm a big fan of food labeling. It's been done in other countries sometimes, red, yellow, and green. Yeah. And I know the store owners don't like that. I mean, you walk into a corner grocery store and pretty much everything there is going to be red.
Yeah.
Because there's some literature that says it's going to harm human health. Right. But that's what they're selling and that's what we're buying. So you're asking for solutions, not just characterization of the problem. I would say the major thing that we could do is education and intervention. So what we're doing at Rush, you mentioned that we continued our inner city health programs. Well, what we do is not just the inner city. We've done suburbs, we've done the Polish community, done the Hispanic community, but we focus on the African American community because that's where most of the disease is. What we do is the HEART program. HEART would be helping everyone assess risk today. And we can set up a booth in a church or at a veggie fest, believe it or not, and do a finger stick for cholesterol and hemoglobin A1C, which many people will recognize that's your measure of how diabetic you are, if at all, and do a blood pressure. With that and a history of smoking and age, ethnicity and gender, you can come up with the ASCVD risk score. Now, not everybody actually has seen this, but I can flash it up there for a second. It only shows for a second. You might want to write that down, ASCVD risk calculator. You can buy the app is free. Funniest part about it is a great party tool. Not that we do parties anymore during COVID, but Uncle Joe, what was your cholesterol? And what was your last blood pressure? Oh, your risk is 17.5%. You need to see your doctor. We can actually use that tool to convince people to intervene on their illnesses. We're trying to do one step further these days at Rush, and that is to partner with churches to do interventions. And some of them on our prevention department side are more coaching. And what I've been doing is like, can you give up animal products for Lent, for example? And we had a whole church that agreed with that and got 50 volunteers to give up animal products for Lent. And we actually sent them vegan food to their homes with the help of some wonderful philanthropists. The effect on the health parameters was amazing. The drop in blood sugar, the drop in hemoglobin A1C, the blood pressure, blood cholesterol, insulin levels. And anyone who's interested in glucose metabolism will realize that the high insulin levels is actually what's causing the cardiovascular disease. That's the mechanism. So you do that sugar sweetened beverage, your insulin level goes up and you absorb more food. Okay. So instead of passing it out, you gain weight. And once you are gaining that weight, you become insulin resistant. The only way you can deal with the insulin resistance is higher insulin levels. Okay. And so you end up in this circular pathophysiology that the best way to get out of it is a whole food plant-based diet. So obviously it was only 5 weeks during Lent, but it was highly successful from a biochemical point of view. And it would be great to make that kind of intervention along with the education so that it's long lasting and reduce risk throughout the person's lifetime.
Yes, thank you for that. We've been working at Food Revolution Network with Wholesome Wave. They have a produce prescription program, and it's been quite successful so far. It's been studied, and essentially doctors prescribing fruits and vegetables, which are paid for or partially paid for then by insurance company money, or the idea is Medicare, Medicaid. And then for certain conditions, as you know, food really can be medicine, and it's a lot cheaper than a lot of the drugs and, of course, surgeries that are widely used today. So I think there's a lot of potential here. And obviously, it removes the cost barrier for a lot of people for whom it is a serious concern. We're also working on the Double Up Bucks program, which doubles the value of food stamp or SNAP dollars for fruits and vegetables. And I think that, too, has a lot of promise for helping increase access in low-income communities.
So I know you're supposed to be interviewing me, but can I flip it for a moment?
Sure.
Because I'm sure the audience would be interested. How do you mechanize that? So there are insurance companies that actually will take a food prescription. Well,
it's being piloted, and Medicare, Medicaid is probably the best bet because they have sort of customers for life. Whereas with insurance companies, the payback may not be immediate in some cases. Probably for a cardiovascular disease patient, it would be. But for the idea of providing produce prescriptions more broadly to all kinds of conditions may need some longer term justification to show the cost benefit ratio. But yeah, essentially the notion is that you can be prescribed drugs and go to a pharmacy. So why not have special funds available that are funded by the insurance company for fruits and vegetables specifically? And there are pilots happening on this. Interestingly, Kaiser Permanente actually has farmers markets in their hospitals now. So it would not be a hard jump to have the money be available there. And essentially you're going to the pharmacy to get your fruits and vegetables directly from their system because they're an integrated HMO system. But there are other ways to do it. With the SNAP program and the Double Up Bucks program, they have it set so certain vendors that are selling fruits or vegetables, they get they're able to offer double as much for every dollar spent. And consumers, when they are offered this, they buy more fruits and vegetables, they eat more fruits and vegetables, and they have better health outcomes because of it. And this is all being documented. So exciting stuff,
Well, I would love to see that, so obviously I work with the American Medical Association. The American Medical Association is not your grandfather's AMA. This is a completely different organization. It's full of young, vibrant people who want to change the world. This would be a perfect, AMA resolution to lobby Congress and Medicare, preferably Medicare. Medicare really doesn't like legislation.
Yeah.
They don't want to be told what to do. They want to figure it out on their own. Either way, to get in front of the regulators and legislators, if necessary, to try to promote the health of people by doing these food prescriptions. I do know that University of Virginia was working with local pharmacies to do pharmacy with an F. Okay.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was a highly successful program, but I think people were still paying for it. And I think they were doing some subsidies off of philanthropy, if I have that right. But we need more programs like that. And if it was at the federal level, it would reduce healthcare costs. That's the kind of thing that we need to put in front of Medicare. And not everybody knows that. And if they've listened to me, they've heard me say intermittently that, being vegan is your patriotic duty. And everyone will smile. But what basically was supposed to happen in 2026. I would say it's cardiology's fault. That is, in the 42 years, I know that my bio said 30. No, it's 42 years I've been doing cardiology. We've seen a lot of changes, a lot of developments, okay? And some of those developments have really been game changers. I'm talking stents, not just bypass surgery, but stents, the valvular stuff that we do, the statins. I know there's a lot of people who think the statins aren't good for you. Well, you're on the side of saving the federal dollars because statins save so many lives. Nobody's cured, people aren't dying, and they end up on the Medicare rolls for much longer than they would be without them. So all those statin deniers, you're probably helping the Medicare budget because people will pass away without it. So the interesting part is that we were based on, you could not have foreseen the development of and there's been cancer developments. I mean, I'm not disparaging anyone else's developments, but medical knowledge doubles every 2 years. There was no way to predict that and collect premiums 30 years ago for how successful we were going to be. There's just no way to do that. Therefore, Medicare was supposed to go broke in 2026. Okay. With COVID and all those expenditures, now it's supposed to go broke in 2024. That's right around the corner. What does going broke mean? Well, the Medicare commissioners actually sort of mapped out what they thought would happen. One was an immediate 30% cut to all providers, hospitals and physicians. You kidding me? That, there's going to be some people who survive that, and a lot of practitioners will not. That's going to be, crashing of the system and no more access. And the dialysis, which is $86,751 per year per dialysis person, is going to go away. How do you survive that? Well, the best way to do it is to pay into the system and never use it. And how do you do that? Diet and exercise. It's really not a difficult prescription. Everyone has heard something about it, maybe not enough to convince them to change, but I'm really serious. It's your patriotic duty. Do the exercise, 150 to 300 minutes a week of dynamic exercise of some sort, and a whole food plant-based diet. Be your ideal body weight. Watch your blood pressure. Watch your cholesterol. Do not smoke. Make sure that your blood sugar is normal, and you do those things with the exercise and the diet. That's, by the way, the American Heart Association's Life Simple 7. we will decrease the healthcare cost and we'll make it sustainable and survivable.
Fantastic. I'm going to follow up with you after this interview to talk a little bit more about the AMA and moving the double up bucks and produce prescription programs forward. Lots for us to do together on that. But we have a bunch of, I know we have limited time with you, Dr. Williams, and we have a bunch of questions from Whole Life Club members. So let's see if we can get to these fairly rapid fire just to address these. And let me be clear with everyone, no medical advice here. Some of these get very specific about people's journeys, and obviously they have to talk to their own healthcare professional. And you can always just say that if you don't want to comment on something. But in general, this is just coaching and feedback. Okay. Patty said, I've had heart issues all my life. Nothing anyone thinks is serious, but I'm worried. She says that she's had 2 full heart exams since college due to chest tightness, heart palpitations, and shortness of breath, but everything came back normal. Her grandfather died of heart disease at 45 and she's 49. She's working on eating clean, exercising, and getting more water and sleep. Wondering if she should trust the results of her exams and just work on lifestyle, or she should look for certain symptoms or get continually checked.
So there's a lot to unpack there. And again, you're so right. I'm not going to give medical advice, but I can talk about principles. Okay. So one principle is that when people worry about their family history, remember that we are all hybrids. We are not clones. Okay. And so a grandparent actually isn't a primary family member. And so if your mother, father, brother, sister, or heaven forbid, child has premature coronary artery disease and has a heart attack in their 40s, that actually does confer risk to you. An uncle, a grandparent doesn't quite. And so not nearly as much. So we don't worry about that so much. What I would be concerned about is, there's 3 different things. Shortness of breath in general is our most concerning symptom because it could be coronary heart disease, it could be heart failure, it could be all sorts of things, none of which are good. But it also could be not cardiac at all. And so the testing that we do, because it's such a major concern, the testing that we do is usually pretty darn good at finding the source of shortness of breath and saying whether or not it's something life-threatening or not, which often it can be, unless it's just like deconditioning. I'm trying to walk, but I haven't been walking, and you just have to keep training. But that's the kind of thing you do under the supervision of a physician. So do you trust the tests? Well, there is one piece of, I think, underutilized, and I know there are a lot of practitioners who now are taking up the mantle of it, including the American Heart Association and American College of Cardiology in our prevention guidelines. If people are at risk, they might consider having a coronary artery calcium score. At this point, it started sort of in the mid 1980s. And at this point, there's so much data saying that if it's negative, you've got a really good prognosis. If it's positive, you need to have some management. And moreover, I am a cardiac CT person, so I always look at them personally on my patient. And I try to look at it as like the strike zone and real estate, location. If you have plaque and it's in your left main, or the terrible nickname, the Widowmaker, the upper portion of the left anterior descending, the artery that goes down the front, that location of coronary calcium score is something that you really have to take very seriously. Whereas if it's in a branch of a branch of a branch, maybe not so much. But the total score confers risk as well. The higher the score, the more risk a person is in, despite the fact that the calcium is in the healed plaque. And so the calcium itself is not the problem. It's the non-calcified plaque that's next to it. And so people will get upset when they have a bad calcium score. They'll go to the doctor, they get put on a statin, they start doing a plant-based diet, they're exercising, their score goes up. Well, the score went up because you're healing. You have all this plaque and it's becoming stable plaque. So I'm not a big believer in doing the test over and over and over again. Not sure that there's a lot of value in that, but I certainly would recommend it for the people who are at risk. And that little risk calculator, it's actually pretty good at telling, who is going to benefit from that coronary calcium score. People whose risk is above 5%, but less than 20%.
Got it. Thank you. Very helpful. And relatedly, Cynthia asked, what are the best things to do to decrease chances of a cardiac event when a calcium scan comes back with a high reading, 492 in this case.
Mhm.
Obviously, a plant-based diet, exercise, eliminating alcohol and tobacco, and adequate sleep will help. Are there any other things that could help decrease the risk?
So I actually speak incessantly about this. I try to save everyone. SAVE is my little 4-letter acronym for statin at the highest dose, aspirin at the lowest dose, vegan diet, that is whole food plant-based diet, and exercising. And I really do, if someone has, if it's prevention, 150 minutes. If has disease, I'm aiming for 300 minutes per week. Now, it turns out that sometimes that 492 is, like I mentioned already, it's just going to double down on it because it's so important. It's in a bad location. And not everybody talks about the location, but if it's in a bad location, I usually order a stress test to make sure that when I'm telling somebody to do, oh, let's do some high intensity interval training, that nothing bad is going to happen. Everyone's worried about exercise and dying during exercise. And I can tell you that exercise is risky. It's just that not exercising is more risky. So you basically have to do it, and you do it gradually, and you do it under supervision if there's an issue. So having a stress test, particularly with imaging, if you have a very high calcium score, will give you some insight as to how safe it is. It's interesting. I was trying to figure out how to make a acute adjustment to my SAVE acronym to talk about cigarettes. But I really don't have that many smokers. I'm going to smoke and go to a cardiologist. It does happen. It's just not very frequent. So I've assumed that people are doing that. But SAVE, that's what we try to do.
Got it. Thank you. Rana said, I have hemochromatosis that has caused cirrhosis CP stage 4A, as well as some other issues. I also have medicine-controlled mild high blood pressure, severe central and obstructive sleep apnea, for which I use a BiPAP machine. I've lost 30 of the 90 pounds I need to lose. My question is, can left ventricular hypertrophy, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, be reversed? And if so, how? Thank you.
So the first thing that we have to think about when there's hemochromatosis is whether or not there is iron infiltration in the heart. And so people can get a cardiac MRI that'll be very specific about iron overload in the heart. If that's the case and the walls are thick because of that, it's a good idea. What left ventricular hypertrophy means thick walls. Okay. Yeah. And if your walls are thick because of an infiltration of anything, that really needs to be addressed. With iron, it's usually done with an intravenous infusion of a chelating agent that'll take the iron out into the urine. But I imagine the person's dealing with that already because of the liver, but it can affect the pancreas and the skin color turning bronze, and they call it bronze diabetes, for example. But it certainly can affect the heart as well.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. And one other note for Rana is just to say, sounds like you're on the right path. If you're already losing weight, because these things are all connected, obviously, and the sleep issues and the weight issues and the high blood pressure, all of these things are connected. And so the wonderful thing about a healthy diet, whole foods, plant-based diet, is it can help address all of these things at once, in essence. Rachel said, when sleeping, my arms go numb if I turn on one side or the other. Someone mentioned that I may have poor blood circulation. Could this be caused by clogged arteries?
So I hate to give medical advice.
Yes.
This is crossing the line a little bit. She needs to see a physician, okay? And run out with someone, okay? But yes, people have plaque in their arteries. If it's a problem when you're laying over, you can actually feel the pulse when you're in that position. The odds are the pulse is just fine. That's usually cervical spine disease, and usually you need an MRI of the neck to try to see which nerves are being compressed. And if it really is arthritis in the neck or, so nerve compression, it'll give those exact same symptoms.
Yes, thank you. Valerie said, I've suffered from high blood pressure for a number of years. We eat 80% plant-based, and whole foods are 80% of our grocery cart. But my hunger persists, and when I eat plant only, my blood pressure and anxiety worsen. the fix is steak. It seems that red meat, even very minimally, helps with both of those symptoms. Yogurts and eggs help with anxiety too, but they're not good for high blood pressure. Is there any advice or recommendation to help me stop consuming animal products without getting anxiety upticks? Prayer got me through quitting smoking, and it's definitely helping here, but I don't crave the red meat. I just notice how much better I feel when I do eat it.
So that's an interesting thing. It's certainly not cardiology. It's certainly behavioral. No question about it that anxiety disorders come in all sizes and packages. And it would be really good to see someone about that, just because it's having, when you're saying eating eggs and red meat, the literature, and sometimes this will help, by the way, or make you more anxious. Okay. That is, if you Google the words or use search engine, eggs and mortality, you'll see an article from the United States centered at Northwestern. And then there was another one from Italy that was 2 weeks ago, and another one from Japan. And eggs increasing mortality is becoming clearer and clearer. The data has been out there for a while, but there's a lot of controversy about it. And Dr. Barnard put out an article where he analyzed egg literature and the controversies therein. And it seemed that if there was industry sponsorship of the research, that it looked more positive. And if it wasn't industry sponsored, it's pretty much uniformly negative for human health, particularly that half an egg increasing mortality, half an egg per week per day, increasing mortality by 17%. So I would say that everything that I would say would just make the person more anxious because the things that they're choosing are particularly damaging to the cardiovascular system. So seeing someone who could deal with the anxiety would be really a good idea.
Yeah, thank you for that. Ronnie has said, can mitral valve prolapse be reversed, and does food affect it?
So interestingly enough, when I was an intern, I was working at Emory, and there was one of the best cardiologists on the planet was my mentor, J. Willis Hurst, and he authored one of the first really huge comprehensive textbook, and he went against everybody in his own department, saying that mitral valve prolapse is not a thing, that it's like, don't tell a patient they have mitral valve prolapse. It's like telling them that they have big feet. Okay. The reason that was very insightful was it really is like having big feet. That is, the valve is just too big for the heart. And the valve, that overgrowth of the size of the valve, when the heart beats, all this extra tissue goes backwards into the left atrium. It makes a click, and then it can leak. And the interesting part of it is that usually as people get older, the heart starts to enlarge a little bit, particularly if they have high blood pressure. And then you run into these people who have heart failure, and they have these gigantic hearts. And some of them are the valve cannot cover, so the valve leaflets aren't touching each other like they should. And so they're leaking, and they get into trouble. Well, the people who used to have mitral valve prolapse, now the heart's so big that the leaflets are just perfectly in tune with each other, so they don't get the leakage. So there may be, you wouldn't want heart failure on anyone, you wouldn't wish it on anyone, but it may mean that right sizing the valve means that person is going to be better off because they had the mitral valve prolapse. Now, the other part of that question is, does it have anything to do with nutrition? Not really. Other than if you let your heart function deteriorate, your valve won't leak so much, but that's not a good idea. Mitral valve prolapse, there was a whole science about thinking that it caused sudden cardiac death and it causes strokes and all sorts of things. None of those have actually panned out over the decades. So this was a disease that almost went quiescent after the 1980s.
I see. Thank you. Dixie said, I've been diagnosed with severe blockage in my right leg. Can I heal this with a plant-based diet? I've switched to a plant-based diet and intend to remain on it regardless. Is it possible to clear the blockage with diet, or will it necessarily require some other intervention?
So this would be the SAVE person?
Yeah.
Okay. Those
Yeah.
same four letters. I hope they were listening before: statin, aspirin, vegan diet, and exercise. Now, that there may be more to it than that. That is, to be specific, they're asking about plaque regression. That's the official terminology for getting the plaque and the obstruction to decrease over time. And there really have been 5 different things that have been shown to do this at this point, and I'm sure we're going to get more. Number 1, for the first, was Dean Ornish that you mentioned. Okay, plaque regression, small amounts, but in coronary artery disease, and peripheral artery disease and coronary artery disease, essentially the same. Okay, number 2 was actually Dr. Esselstyn, and he's got probably the most impressive pictures. If you Esselstyn regression in your search engine, hit images, you'll see the case of the 40-something-year-old surgeon at Cleveland Clinic whose arteries completely cleared over a matter of 30 months of a plant-based diet. The third one would be actually third and fourth. It would be a tie for third because they were in the same publication. If people want to see it, it's called the Asteroid Trial. And there are a handful of other trials, but that's the one with the nicest graphics that people can digest, no pun intended. And it turns out that it's high-dose atorvastatin that used to be brand name Lipitor, and high-dose rosuvastatin used to be brand name Crestor. And this was where the Crestor company thought that they could improve their market share against Lipitor by proving that that at the highest dose of each, that's 40 milligrams of theirs and 80% milligrams of their opponents or competitor, that they could get better plaque regression because Crestor gave a little bit more LDL reduction, but it was a small amount. They thought they could do it. It turns out it was a virtual tie.
Yeah.
And both in the moderate dose, it stabilized plaque. In the large dose, it regressed plaque. The fifth one is actually another medication. There's so many people who are statin intolerant. And about 8 years ago, we started using these injectables. And one of those 2 drugs that you inject under the skin twice per month actually did a study on plaque regression. It's called the Glagoth Trial, named after my mentor at University of Chicago, Seymour Glagoth. And it turns out that they not only showed plaque regression, because everybody who does that injection, you're going to get a 60% decrease in your LDL cholesterol. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Plant-based diet, statin, doesn't matter. You're going to get another 60% reduction. And it turns out that they had this wide variety of LDLs and follow the people. And what they showed was that 100% of people get plaque regression if you get an LDL less than 58. And so that kind of became our new target. European Society, I think they put out the last guidelines, they said 55. Okay, fine, 55 instead of 58. But the higher the LDL, the more plaque growth you get and the less regression. So 5 things. That drug was evolocumab, atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, Esselstyn, and Ornish. Those are the 5 things. And I expect that it's going to grow, but it's all going to be centered around getting the LDL down to less than 55.
Got it. Okay, I know we need to let you go real soon. I have to ask one burning question that's on my mind. Coffee and LDL cholesterol. I've seen some conflicting data on this. What's your take? Is it okay to drink coffee? Should people be worried if they have high LDL?
So I will first of all say the coffee and the almond milk is actually pretty darn good. I would have to look specifically at LDL cholesterol, but what made me start drinking coffee at a relatively older age, because I never did it much before, was the fact that there's a large amount of epidemiological data saying that you will decrease heart attack, stroke, diabetes, and death by drinking 4 to 5 cups of coffee per day. Seriously? How do you do that? Yeah. I'm trying, but it's hard to develop a new habit like that. And the caveats are, there are people that, first of all, it's observational data, not prospective randomized data. There is one other, a handful of caveats about coffee. One would be that everything we said to the general public in cardiology about coffee and rhythm disturbances was pretty much wrong. That is, the atrial fibrillation tends to be suppressed by caffeine and coffee, not generated by it. So, I mean, I just remember so many patients, that was the advice that we were told to give, and it turns out it wasn't really true. But then the next caveat is that there are certain people who have that coffee response gene. Not only will they get palpitations, but fast heart rate, they get jittery and nervous.
Yeah.
And if they do it in small amounts, it wakes them up. If they do it in larger amounts, it is uncontrollable. And then the other side of it is that it tends to be a bit addictive for some people. It's the so-called caffeine withdrawal headaches that people get. And so it may not be the perfect solution for everyone, but if you're one of those people who can genetically tolerate it, that's really good. My own genetics was kind of weird. If I drink 1 cup of coffee, my heart rate slows down, completely opposite of what it's supposed to do. And it takes the second one to get it up from 42 to 50. It's pretty bizarre.
Interesting.
So saying that to say, there are personal variations and we have to be respectful of them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you. I know we've got to let you go. Everyone can stay on with me to learn more about Whole Life Club. This is an incredible opportunity, only available till tomorrow. But first, Dr. Williams, I just want to thank you so much for your decades of leadership, for your wisdom, and for your time with us today. We're so grateful for who you are and what you stand for in the world, and for your taking the time to share with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great dialogue. I hope we continue it, particularly with legislation and regulation.
Yes.
We can do it.
We'll be in touch on that. All right. Thank you. We'll let you go now. And for everyone else, please feel free to stay on so you can learn more about Whole Life Club. The doors are only open until end of day tomorrow. This is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. The goal of Whole Life Club is to help you sustain and optimize your healthy living lifestyle for life. It's about landing the plane. It's about getting the results. It's about putting everything that we're talking about here today into action. And the doors only open to the public twice every year. So this week, for the next few days, in fact, until tomorrow, is the last time in 2021. The only other way to get in is to sometimes be able to get it after purchasing one of Food Revolution Network's courses or major products. But if you're wanting to enter directly into Whole Life Club, this is your time. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. If you're already a member, there is no need to keep watching because you already know how awesome it is. My dad and colleague, John Robbins, and I and the team at Food Revolution Network launched Whole Life Club because we were sick and tired of seeing so many people not be able to make the bridge between knowing and doing, between getting the information and actually putting it into action to get the results that they were longing for. And so we realized that you don't just need one epiphany, one aha moment. Oftentimes you need that support to sustain it and optimize it over time. You know, a new pathway can open up and you shift the course of your trajectory, and suddenly the world looks different and you start moving in a new way. But it's the steps you take day in and day out that actually get you to a new future. And Whole Life Club is about providing that steady, consistent pathway so you can keep going, keep walking, keep moving, and keep making progress. And so the way we structure it is every single month we have a theme. It's kind of like a course for that month. For example, a month on cardiovascular health, or a month on gut health, or a month on brain health, or a month on anti-cancer living, or blood sugar balance, or boosting your energy levels, or mindfulness and inner peace, or mental health. We have a focus like that. And then throughout that month, we have one action hour with a guest expert, and our members can actually submit questions in advance that we can bring into that action hour. Plus, we have a bunch of recipes. There are 5 new amazing whole foods, plant-based recipes every week that tie to that month's theme. So if we're looking at mental health, you're going to get recipes that are rich in the foods that are good for your mental health. If we're talking about cardiovascular health, we're going to emphasize the foods that have been proven to bring down cholesterol levels and increase heart health and increase longevity and decrease risk for heart disease. So you get those recipes, you get an action of the week video every week where I make another video focusing on a specific simple step you can take to keep making progress towards your health goals. And then a community where you can talk and share and connect with peers and loved ones. Over time, we become loved ones and support each other in moving forward. So that's kind of the structure. And when you join, you don't just get ongoing access to the new content that comes out, but you also get the entire library, over 500 recipes that are completely searchable by topic, by content, by specific specific ingredients, by breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can search for things you want to leave out. If you're allergic to almonds, you can just check that box and you will only see recipes that don't have almonds. And it's an amazing library. They're so good. I think this is probably the biggest hit in the entire Whole Life Club community. But you also get all of our past action hours and contents and action of the week videos. We have hundreds of them now, and it's all available to you instantly when you join. Now, I want to talk for a minute about what this means. We conducted a survey a little while back. We asked our Whole Life Club members, what does being a part of Whole Life Club mean to you? How has it impacted your life? And I'll tell you, the results were so heartwarming. We heard that people were losing excess weight. They were getting more energy. They were feeling more stability in their healthy living lifestyle. Like it was easier and easier for them to do the right thing, even on autopilot, in good times and in bad. They were reversing ailments and getting off medications that they no longer needed. They were feeling less lonely and more social support. They were feeling more ease and flow in their healthy living lifestyle. And yes, a lot of them were feeling more joy in their lives. So if that sounds good to you, and if those are the kinds of results that you want, then this is an incredible opportunity because the doors are open until tomorrow. This week, we've had a series of action hours with Dr. David Katz, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, and then, of course, today. And in celebration of this Action Hour series, as well as the recent Food Revolution Summit that we held, we decided to open the doors. And so there's a whole new raft of cohorts that are joining together. And that's what's so awesome about this moment, because you get to join with a whole bunch of peers, hundreds and hundreds of people who are stepping in and saying yes to applying healthy eating for their whole lives. But this opportunity expires tomorrow. So now is your time. If you want to get in, if you want to land this plane and stay with it and stay the course and optimize your healthy living lifestyle long term. And if you want to do so with peers, then this is an incredible moment right here, right now. And here's even better news, I think, for a lot of folks who are struggling financially. There's a huge discount right now. And when you join today, you lock in your price. If you get an annual membership, it's just $127. And that price will not go up, even if we do raise the price in the future, which certainly may happen. That price will be locked in for you as long as you keep your membership active. $127 per year gets you all access to all of what we've created, our entire library of content, and steady, consistent, ongoing support as we carry forward together. So this is the opportunity. This is the invitation. And you can say yes if you want to, right here and right now, and join in Whole Life Club. Now, I want to share with you a message from Genevieve. She's one of our Whole Life Club members. She's from Ontario, Canada. And a little while back, I got to ask her what being a part of Whole Life Club and making the changes that she's made as a part of this community have meant in her life. So let's go ahead and roll the video now so you can see what's been happening for Genevieve. Here we go.
I'm Genevieve. Genevieve in English. My friends call me Jen. I'm from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
And where were you in your life? Like, what were the challenges you were facing before you joined Whole Life Club and found connected with this body of work?
So before joining Whole Life Club, about maybe a year before that, my health was bad. My whole everything wasn't good. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And back in the late 90s, that was really rare. So I've been on this path to try to kind of get that resolved. And I saw a documentary on veganism and how the industry, how it's factory farming, which got me straight into veganism. Like I've been a vegan for 2 years now. And I struggled to fit in with the crowds. I struggled to find meals. I struggled I was alone. I felt really alone. So when I saw the Food Revolution Summit, I was like, hey, people like me. And I was like, it's great. So I listened enthusiastically, and then that brought in more people, and that linked me to other documentaries and all that stuff. And then I grew my knowledge. And then the whole Life Club came about. And I was like, this is great. This is like-minded people who are supporting each other, whether they have taken that path to health or they're looking to be on that path. So what I like about that is that there's a combination of the two. People who can offer support and offer tips, but also people who are new that I can offer tips and support too, that I've been there and this is what I do. Maybe this will work for you. And of course, I absolutely enjoy your videos, your weekly videos. They're my pep talks to keep me on that path. And to go back to your original question, my hypothyroidism, all the symptoms that I've had have gone away. Like, I've reversed my hypothyroidism with the whole bucket list that comes along with that title. In 2 years, I'm down to a quarter of the medication I used to take that I took for like 18 years. So that's why I love being part of this club, because I know firsthand that when you change your diet, you change everything. All the ailments that you have, they go away.
Wow, thank you. That's wonderful. Yeah. So give me a snapshot of how your life is different with those symptoms gone. Give me an example of some of the symptoms you were facing and how it's changed now.
My biggest notice, it's really funny, but it's hair. Like my hair was so thin, so dry, so brittle. Now I can grow long hair. I can be proud of my hair and not tie it back all the time. My nails, I couldn't grow nails for the life of me. And now I have to trim them every 2 weeks because they're so strong and so long that I'm scratching my daughter, and it's little subtle things like that you don't notice. And you're like, well, okay, I have hypothyroidism. I can't grow nails. My hair falls out. I'm constantly tired. Brain fog. Brain fog has to be the biggest one. It creeps up on you and you just learn to live with it. And you wake up one day and it's gone and you're like, wow, I feel smarter, but you're not smarter. You're just not bombarded by all these chemicals that are disrupting your brain's normal way of functioning. So that helps me be a better mom. I'm more focused at work. I get better sleep, which cycles into having more energy. And it all starts with good food. If you join Whole Life Club, you will get the support that you need to be on the path to take control of your health.
Well, thank you so much to Genevieve for sharing those inspiring words. It's so heartwarming. It's so meaningful to me, really, to get to hear stories like this. And I'll tell you, we hear stories like this almost every day. So if ever you wonder whether there's hope for you, whether it's still time to turn things around, whether you really can reap the benefits of a whole foods, plant-based diet and get the results that you want for your health and your life, I want to say yes. Of course, everything is anecdotal. We don't have major long-term placebo-controlled studies here, but we do have a lot of anecdotal stories. And we have a lot of data behind us showing that when we make the kinds of changes that we advocate in Whole Life Club, people get results. Powerful, transformative, disease-reversing, health-boosting results. And what will happen for you, of course, is to be determined. But this is an opportunity for you to join us that we would love to extend with open heart and open arms and full enthusiasm. So let me ask you right now, are you feeling moved to be a part of this? Does this interest you? Does this inspire you? And if so, I want to invite you to take advantage of this opportunity, knowing we have a 60-day total money back guarantee. So you can join in, experience it all, check out the whole library of content. And if you don't love it, then please ask for your money back, because we don't want you to pay a penny unless this works for you, unless it matters to you. But I think you'll be very pleased with what you find. So That's the deal. I hope to see you in Whole Life Club. And whatever you decide, I look forward to working with you for healthy and for ethical and for sustainable food for all. The world is in desperate need of a food revolution. We're paying a devastating price for a toxic food culture. But the good news is we can do something about it. We can change the world, and we can change our own lives, and we can be a part of the solution on planet Earth. So let's do this together. Thank you so much. When it comes to cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic illness, what really matters isn't how many books you read, how many webinars you attend, or how much you know. What really matters at the end of the day is what you eat and how you live. The science has given us what we need to know. Now it's time for action. It's time to implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle. It's time to get results. It's time to say goodbye to confusion and hello to clarity. It's time to say goodbye to bad habits and hello to good ones. It's time to fall in love with foods that love you back. It's time to join a community that will support you in achieving your goals. It's time for Whole Life Club. Click the link to find out more and to join in now.